It is a wonderful sunny day, which can mean only one thing. It's time to build ourselves a gaming computer inside. One that's affordable, one that's going to look absolutely fantastic, and more importantly, one that's going to be brilliant for gaming, playing the latest and greatest titles at high settings 1080p. This video is very proudly sponsored by the lovely guys over at Gigabyte and Intel, so without further ado, let's get started. The case we're using is fairly new, I think. This one is from Antec. This is the DF800 Flux. And I'm going to start by saying that a lot of things in this build you can sort of go slightly cheaper, maybe 10, 30 quid, depending on what it is. But here I really wanted to build something that I think everyone's going to be really proud to own. This isn't about cutting every corner possible. This is about getting fantastic performance, but still having that cutting edge computer that looks, sounds, and performs brilliantly. I was thinking then, what's a good word for does? Runs, no. That sounds like the runs. It is a bit of a shame that you don't have any cable management grommets, but you do actually have this fan and RGB controller baked in, which is actually a really nice feature, not only because it means you don't need to buy extra stuff, but because it makes cable management that little bit easier. For me though, the real star of the show is actually the motherboard this time, because this is B660, and I could be making this up, but I think it's the first time I've actually used one of these motherboards. So you've got things like PCI Generation 4 baked into this, not DDR5, this is firmly a DDR4 motherboard, but you do get the benefit of more PCIe lanes and faster PCIe lanes, so it's not only more future-proof, but you can get more I/O and more SSDs essentially on the same platform. This is very much a budget-friendly motherboard though. You're saving a lot of money here, which is great because you can pump that into other components, maybe things like a better case, a better graphics card, but do be aware that if you're after more specific features or you want to do overclocking, then obviously you will have to spend more to get that. I think the main thing for me is the fact that you've got 5 USB-A's on this, which might be absolutely fine for you, but it is definitely worth considering before you buy a motherboard, because if you need more than that, then just spend a little bit more and you'll probably get more. Respect though to the fact that you do also get USB-C on the front of the case and USB 3.2, which for a budget-friendly motherboard, I think is pretty ace. It's an ace in the hole. Honestly, I don't actually have a clue what that phrase means. Does it something to do with golf? Let's grab our I/O shield out of the box, our Wi-Fi module, that should be magnetic, and then our M.2 screws for our M.2 SSD. So we do the usual thing of grabbing the motherboard and placing it on top of the box. Then we can move on to our RAM, 3600 megahertz. This is an 8x2 for a total of 16. It's the XPG Spectrix D45G. It is black with an RGB light bar on the top, and you should be able to make this work with Gigabyte ARGB Fusion. It's actually called RGB Fusion. I'm just too keen. Once again, nothing particularly unusual here. Just unclip these little gray slots, which are 2 and 4, line up your RAM modules, and then just click them into place. Then you can get your boxes, just chuck them on the floor. Your mum will clear it up later. Next up, we'll do our SSD. This is the Samsung 980, not to be confused with the super fast 980 Pro that is significantly more expensive. This is usually available for between 50 and 60 quid. This is the 500 gigabyte version. I think a lot of people want to go for 1 terabyte one, but it all depends how many games you own and how many you want on this system at the same time. It's so tiny though, look at this. It's the size of my index finger. Fact of the day. I seem to be in a pretty good mood today actually. It is sunny outside, which always helps. It looks as if we've fulfilled our editor role, so we should get more videos coming soon. While we're here, I guess I could say we have got a new girlfriend. We, I mean me, not you. Like, it's not that sort of relationship. I'm pretty much over COVID at this stage. I'm soon to have 2 weeks off. So yeah, feeling pretty happy to be alive at the moment. Just like this SSD will be when we give it some power, once we screw it into place. That is not a good analogy. But now we can move on to something I'm incredibly excited for, because I haven't actually used this component yet. This is the new 12400. Now I'll start by saying you should get the 12400F version of this, because it's slightly cheaper. It doesn't have the discrete graphics that you're probably not going to use anyway. But this is a 6-core processor. It is of course compatible with B660. This is the latest one from Intel when it comes to like the budget CPU champ. And one of the questions I get asked a lot is, what is the best gaming CPU? Well, first you have to understand that there are no such things as like dedicated gaming CPUs that are better for gaming. The faster the CPU, the faster your theoretical max frame rate could be. But you do have to understand that the graphics card is almost certainly going to be the limiting factor in most games that you play. So you could spend £500 on like a 12900K if you want, but if you're then using it with a 3050, that doesn't really make sense because you'd be better off grabbing like an i7 and then an RTX 3060 Ti and your overall frame rate would be higher. So at the end of the day, it's essentially about buying the cheapest gaming CPU that you can that actually still has the performance that you need to keep up with your graphics card. The socket is slightly different on 1700. You just lower this down, you grab your CPU, just gently place this so that it sits, put the socket back, lower down the retention arm, and then there you have your completed motherboard combination, all ready for a cooler. And of course, if you are trying to save yourself some money, then you can use the stock one that comes in the box, but it's really not very good at all. It might have changed ever so slightly this year though. This actually looks a little bit thicker to me, but the amount of thermal mass that this can take is still very, very small. So it's not for me, not on this occasion anyway. Because we're going to be using something a lot more substantial, something a lot quieter, and something just looks a whole lot better. This is the new Hyper 212 RGB edition from Cooler Master, and I don't really think it's changed much from the old version, other than you now get an Intel 1700 bracket in the box, which of course we actually need to mount on this motherboard. You can see it is a beautiful thing. You can actually add another fan on the back if you want as well. Not really necessary for this, but you have the option should you want to. This looks like the new 1700 bracket, which we can then just pick up and insert through the back of the motherboard. Grab these little clips and then gently place them on top of the cooler. And then the really confusing bit is that you actually then screw this down from the bottom. I know this caught me out the first time I used one of these. One thing you definitely don't want to forget is to actually add some thermal paste. You get a tube in the box, gently put like a small cross on this. Then you can grab the cooler and just line it up with those holes. Fix it down with a cross pattern so you're not putting too much pressure on the socket. And there you have your completed motherboard combo, which does look, as I say, a little bit bare bones. I mean, it's nice to be able to see the SSD, but there's not too much going on here. In order to get the fan on, by the way, it's very simple. You just quite literally push this over the cooler. It's not addressable RGB, it's good old-fashioned, well, old-fashioned RGB, 4-pin. Make sure the arrow goes to the 12 volt, and then plug your CPU fan into one that says CPU fan. I do believe then we're ready to actually put this inside of our chassis and make it look a whole lot more sexy. But first we need the I/O shield, and we'll give this case a good filling in by placing the I/O shield at the big hole at the back. It looks to me as if the standoffs are actually pre-applied, which is pretty cool, so we don't need to add those to the case, but you should lay the whole thing down flat, pick up your motherboard, you can just hold onto the fan here, makes it a fair bit easier, and then just line this up with the I/O shield on the back. Then you can realise that you've not taken the screws out of the hard drive cage rather awkwardly. You're going to need those. Once you do find them, you can just screw this down into those holes. And just like that, you should have your jet black rig starting to come together. I'm quite happy with that. If you do have a look around the back though, you'll discover a load of cables that we do need to connect and plug in. We've got our 3-pin addressable RGB. This will go to the motherboard alongside this 4-pin PWM fan cable. You've got SATA power to actually make this thing work. And then for our front panel, we've got USB 3.0, HD audio for headphones, power switch, and then our reset and our power LED. I mean, I say reset, this is actually a HDD LED, and then the reset is currently plugged into the RGB controller, so you can choose whether you want that to adjust the lighting, or you can plug it into your motherboard and actually reset your PC. So to be fair, other than the lack of cable management grommets, the Antec case, actually not bad so far. USB 3 connects over here, and then right down here at the bottom, you've got your pesky tiny little power and HD LED cables. They're really easy to plug in, just make sure you look in your motherboard manual because it tells you exactly which one is which. And they're so small, there's no point you trying to remember what I'm saying. Just read the manual. HD audio's all the way at the bottom left. We've got a fan header next to the CPU connection all the way above it. And then you've actually got addressable RGB next to the one we've already plugged in on the other side of the board. Which means we're almost there, but now comes the time to actually insert the star of the show, our RTX 3050. And this one is the Eagle. They do actually sell a more high-end version of this, but personally, I would actually strongly advise that you get the best value for money and you go for this one. Obviously, pricing and availability is still a little bit all over the place at the moment, so it is a case of grab the one that you can grab. But if you do get the choice, something like this that is far more compact, still going to be very power efficient, shouldn't make too much noise, and something that ultimately looks very good, I think it's going to be a brilliant choice. Obviously, it is going to depend on the resolution, the game, and the settings that you actually want to play at. But ultimately, if you want to play like Halo Infinite or something like that, this is going to be a fantastic card to do it on. Just probably not 4K. So we're going to remove these two slot covers at the back. This is a bit more of a premium case, so they don't bend out. Gently line it up with the slot, and then push it home. Looks good, no? Which I think brings us on to our final component. And here I think I'm going to replicate a mistake that a lot of people would actually make, because here we've got the CV450 from Corsair, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with this whatsoever. However, the reason I don't actually recommend this specific one is because this doesn't really give you any headroom to like upgrade the graphics card later, and you can pay quite literally like £10–15 more and get like a 550 version of this. They probably even do like a 650, and I think that's going to be a lot more sensible because it's not going to cost you much now, but it is going to allow you to upgrade later without buying a whole new power supply. Not the heaviest system in the world. I can lift it up with one hand. All of those gains. Oh, if you're new to the channel, you might not realize I'm joking, but you just grab the power supply, line it up with a hole at the back. That's the difference between you and me. While you were sitting around doing niche, I was out making moves and gains. That is a TikTok joke if you have no idea what I'm talking about and you think I'm insulting you. I would never do that. Get this nice and snug by screwing it into place. Then you can do the rather unattractive job of sifting through all of this mess. This really big one goes to your motherboard alongside the one that says CPU on it. This one's actually really easy because you can just nest it in at the top and then sort of cable manage it around the side like that. The big ATX goes here at the top. You'll also find these PCIe connectors. These can tuck through into the lower chamber, which then leaves these series of cables that are quite annoying. Bearing in mind, we only need one to actually get this fan hub to work. So we'll plug that in, and then as neatly as you can, you want to start stowing these cables out of sight and out of mind. Graphics card, motherboard, CPU, up here at the top. Just for a little bit of show, I'm going to grab some RGB as well and add this at the top. And I believe that is our computer finished. Really very easy to build in actually, because everything was done for you. Bear in mind I've put about 30 seconds into cable managing this. That's not bad, is it? I think all round I'm pretty happy, or at least I will be when we know this thing works. Drum roll please, here we go. Is this going to work? Power supply's on. We've got some lighting. It is actually a shame that we don't have any lighting on the back, but you could always add extra fans later on. We have a signal. That was very undramatic. I had faith. I think that for a wallet-friendly PC, this really does look pretty good. Obviously, you are spending a little bit more in the case, but I think it is going to be worth it if you're really going to get into PC gaming. You want something that can sort of sit on your desk and sit loud and proud. We will mash the delete key to get into the BIOS. We'll head over to XMP and we will enable this. We go into Smart Fan and we will make all of them silent. And then we can find above 4G decoding, which is resizable bar. So we enable that. And then underneath it says resizable bar support, enable, and then we can go save and exit. And there we go, Windows has shown up because I've already pre-installed this, but don't forget that if you haven't, all you need to do is grab a USB flash drive, download the Windows 10 or Windows 11 installer tool, pop this on that, put it in the back, follow the instructions after restarting your PC, and you're ready to rock and roll. How do you like them apples? Spoken in such an English way. How would you like those apples, sir? Let me update the games and we'll get back to you. And here we are then, all set up and ready to go. I quite like our new backdrop as well. You can still see the PC Centric sign. I kneel and pray to that every single day. We're gonna kick off with game number one, which is some Valorant. You can see straight off the bat, our frame rate is absolutely through the roof with around about 300 to 400 FPS. Valorant definitely isn't the most difficult game to drive out there. It's definitely one of the ones that you can play on like an APU and still get a brilliant high refresh rate experience, but you are gonna be turning down the settings. So the fact that you don't actually need to do that here and you get the best of both worlds is absolutely fantastic. Next on the list, we have everybody's favorite, some Fortnite, here running at absolute max settings with DLSS set to quality. And we've already got ourselves a little firefight. Come on, got him, that's 3 kills. I think the only reason I make these videos now is just to give me an excuse to play Fortnite. It is surprisingly fun. Whenever I'm not hardline liquid cooling a computer, I'm playing some Fortnite. I mean, that's definitely not true, but I wish it was. In terms of frame rate, obviously this is a lot lower than Valorant, it's a lot more intense, and you can turn the settings down if you're after an even higher frame rate. This is a 165Hz monitor, so I'd probably set this to the high preset, but I mean, even at Epic, at a scene like this, where there's a lot going on, a lot of draw distance, we're still easily able to get well over 60 FPS, pretty much close to 90 at the moment, and your noise levels, pretty much inaudible. What's that button do? Oh, very noob. Let us up the stakes though and play probably the most demanding title that you can get on PC right now. Some Cyberpunk 2077 with ray tracing. I don't think it's gonna go that well. Let's try ray tracing low and set DLSS to quality, because at 1080p I wouldn't want to go any lower. Okay, here we go, and I am very pleasantly surprised. We are indeed getting around about 60 FPS at 1080p DLSS quality with ray tracing. I'm almost very surprised about that. Have they recently updated this game? Is it suddenly a lot more optimized? Or is this actually a title that you can play ray tracing on? Yeah, you can see it definitely does start to drop a little bit as we're doing a little bit more intense stuff, shall we say, but this is very playable, you know, 45 to 60 FPS depending on where you are. Really not too shabby whatsoever, and it is going to give you a proper ray tracing experience. Oh, just out of interest, what happens if we go to graphics and we set it to just ultra? Yeah, there is a sizable increase, around about 10 FPS more, I'd say. It seems that whenever you're driving, you lose between 10 and 15. So yeah, definitely no problem playing Cyberpunk. Remember, it will have to be at 1080p, but if you're okay with that, top-notch experience. Which leaves us with one final game. I say it's my personal favourite, but I have not played this in months. I don't think at all this year. I am Jumpmaster in the ship, ready to drop out, and what's that, around about 80 to 100 FPS? I think the only time you'd be disappointed with this PC is if you were looking to play like a higher resolution like 1440p or maybe even a high-res ultra-wide. It's not really got enough grunt for that. It would get you by in a lot of games, but not all of them. But I mean, realistically, I think for PC gaming, 1080p is pretty much all anyone needs. If they're looking to just play games, you're not too fast about the way it looks, you just want that high refresh rate experience, and you almost just want to get lost in the title. But yeah, all in all, I'm pretty happy with this one actually. I think it is a fantastic looking system, and I think this perfectly shows that if you do want to spend just a little bit more than you absolutely need to, then you definitely can get a system that is a lot more future-proof. But I think for me, something you'd probably be more proud to own. Let me know your thoughts on this down in the comment section below. What do you like? What do you dislike? What would you change? And of course, as always, if you do want to check out current pricing on this or anything else featured in this video, you can find that link down below with my Amazon affiliate links. But thank you so much for watching. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Smash the like button, get yourself subscribed, and I'll catch you in the next one.